Welcome to the Entrepreneur's Experience, a series of interviews with entrepreneurs who have started their own companies. This series is sponsored by the University of Pittsburgh. In the summer of 2007, interviews with multiple entrepreneurs at various stages of starting businesses were interviewed to discover their story. Each one is unique. I am Babs Carrier, an entrepreneur myself and currently president and CEO of Remcom, Inc. In these interviews, you will meet Mitch Fink and Carolyn Green, co-founders and CEO and COO of Logical Therapeutics, Inc., an early-stage biotechnology company developing medicines to treat diseases that are associated with poorly controlled or excessive inflammation. Mitch is an MD who most recently was chair of the Department of Critical Care Medicine at the University of Pittsburgh. Carolyn was the founding director of the Office of Enterprise Development at the University of Pittsburgh, which reviewed hundreds of technologies and helped to form more than 10 companies since 2001. Hi, Mitch. Thanks for doing this. And I think it would be really wonderful if you could tell us a little something about yourself and your background.
Thanks, Babs. So I'm a surgeon. I was educated in medical school at Washington University, and I got my training in surgery during the tail end of the Vietnam era at the National Naval Medical Center in Bethesda, Maryland. My first academic job was at the University of Massachusetts in Worcester. After that, I moved into the Harvard system, and I was at both the Mass General Hospital and the Beth Israel Hospital. And was recruited to the University of Pittsburgh in 1999. So I've been at the University of Pittsburgh for just about 8 years.
And how about your background in terms of with startups and entrepreneurial ventures?
So I think my first experience in that regard was when I was at the Massachusetts General Hospital. I and two other guys formed a little startup based on an invention that came from our laboratory. We formed what's called an S corporation. We never took in any venture capital, so that little venture came to no good end. It cost me a little bit of money to maintain the patents for a while, but ultimately that company just sort of disappeared. In late 1999, I and two other colleagues formed another company which had a more successful story. That company was based on inventions that came from my laboratory as well as the laboratories of my two colleagues. The company was called Critical Therapeutics. It was a drug development company, is a drug development company focusing on medicines for critically ill patients. The company received venture financing in 2000 and was successful in having a public offering in the spring of 2004. Company continues to be traded on the NASDAQ exchange, has one registered drug that it's selling, and has reasonably good prospects for future growth.
And what led to Logical Therapeutics, your current venture that you're working on now with Carolyn?
So Carolyn and I had been working together for, I guess, about 12 or 18 months. Carolyn, as you know, was the director of the Office for Enterprise Development, and I had been appointed by Art Levine, the associate or the vice chancellor for health sciences, as an associate dean for, I guess, like translational research and entrepreneurial development. And so Carolyn and I worked together to try to help inventors at the university take their inventions and turn them into something that might actually ultimately help people. In the context of seeing dozens, probably hundreds of stories, we came across a story by a young scientist named Alan Zhao. Alan is a cell biologist and a pharmacologist. He's interested in obesity and type 2 diabetes. And he had discovered that the anti-obesity hormone leptin is inactivated by an inflammatory protein called C-reactive protein. Not only did he clearly show that leptin binds to CRP, he showed in a series of very elegant in vivo and in vitro experiments that the ability of leptin to regulate body mass and metabolism is abrogated by binding to CRP. Additionally, he discovered a series of peptides that block the interaction of leptin with CRP and restore leptin responsiveness. So from Alan's standpoint, he had discovered potentially the cure for obesity and type 2 diabetes. Obviously not a small deal. And as we heard Alan's story, we really thought this was the best story of all the stories that we'd heard by pit inventors over the previous 18 months or so. And so with Alan's willing participation, Carolyn and I drove downtown and met with an attorney and created a company with the express purpose of figuring out a way to commercialize Alan Zhao's important discovery. Very clearly, however, we recognize that Alan's discovery, as exciting as it was very early. And the timeline from taking his mouse data into something that would go into man would be measured in years, probably many years. And in the current investment environment, having a early preclinical story like Alan's, even if it's very exciting, is probably insufficient for raising capital. So Carolyn and I kept our eyes peeled looking for a complementary asset or two that we could bring into this fledgling company that might enhance its ability to attract venture financing. And it turned out that I was on the scientific advisory board of another little company located in San Diego. And this company had fallen on hard times and indeed was getting ready to close its doors. The company had discovered a series of small molecules that are prodrugs of commonly used non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs like naproxen and ibuprofen and so forth. One of these compounds had been taken all the way through the late stages of preclinical development, and indeed had already been tested successfully in about 50 human volunteers, and no serious problems had been discovered in the course of that development work. So using some of my own financial resources, I secured a 90-day option on an exclusive license to this compound. And with that option in hand, Carolyn and I went looking for enough money from venture financiers to allow us to obtain an exclusive license. We were successful in obtaining about $1.5 million from a Pennsylvania-based venture fund. With that $1.5 million, we secured the rights to this asset, and with more or less with the remainder of that money, Carolyn left her day job at the University of Pittsburgh to become employee number 1 in logical therapeutics. And in my free time, the two of us wrote a business plan. We took airline trips to Boston and New York and even San Francisco on one occasion to try to tell our story to venture groups. And ultimately, were successful in putting together a syndicate that raised $30 million for this startup.
Has it been an easy path to potentially leave the university, or how do you feel?
No, it's not been an easy path. Very conflicted. The past 8 years, actually, at the University of Pittsburgh have been the best 8 years of my professional life. I've had just a wonderful time founding and building the Department of Critical Care Medicine. The department has done quite well, and I have close friends in the department and close friends outside the department on the faculty of the university. I enjoy almost every aspect of life in the university. So the decision to leave was not a trivial one. And I still have second thoughts. There's no doubt about it.
What piqued the actual thought to leave? Is it the right time?
The answer to that question is complicated. First of all, I guess, there are really only 2 points in your life when you can take on a lot of risk. One is at the beginning of your professional career, when you really when you don't have much momentum, and if the career path that you take turns out to be a bad one, you've got a lot of runway left, a lot of time and energy to recalibrate and redirect your efforts and do something else. In the middle of your career, when you're successful at something, changing your career direction is almost impossible. At that point, you have responsibilities to a family, typically, and it's very difficult to take on a lot of risk. I'm now at the other end of a career. I'm almost 60 years old and probably have enough time left in me professionally to do one more big thing. And if I was ever going to do something like this, this was now the right time to do it. This is an opportunity for me to learn something completely new. And I've been at it now full time for about 2.5 weeks. And I can tell you every day I'm learning something new. I'm amazed at how steep the learning curve is. I think some of my reluctance to do this is because I worry a lot about whether the learning curve is too steep. In other words, am I going to make some serious mistakes that compromise the success of the venture before I figure it out and have learned what the right thing to do is. But fortunately, Carolyn knows a lot of things that I don't know, and I guess I know a lot of things that she doesn't know. So we make good complementary pieces in a puzzle. And if we can surround ourselves now over the next couple of months with 5 or 6 or 7 really excellent people, then we have a reasonable shot at success with this venture.
Carolyn, can you tell us something about your background and therefore how that led to doing what you're doing now with Logical Therapeutics?
Well, my last job before Logical Therapeutics was with the University of Pittsburgh, where I started and directed an office called the Office of Enterprise Development, which is still here at the university and helping to commercialize technologies from the health sciences. I started that office back in 2001 with a generous donation from a gentleman named Scott Limbaugh, and with some tremendous leadership from Ron Herberman and also from Dr. Art Levine. We were able to grow that operation to serve the health sciences and help bring technologies out. My personal background was that of a chemist. I spent about 15 years in technology, mostly in software, and software for engineers and chemists to utilize to simulate processes. So I didn't have a strong healthcare background when I came to the university, but luckily I was surrounded by a lot of people who did. So I started my career as a teacher, actually, of chemistry and math.
Tell us about the logical opportunity and what captured your eye about that.
Well, you know, I started the company with my partner, Mitch Fink, who I know you've also spoken to. We got the idea for this company, actually, when we met a cell biologist here named Alan Zhao. And Alan had what we thought was a pretty cool invention, and it got both of us thinking about how we would turn that into a company, which of course is what I thought about every day when I saw technologies. But this one I thought was particularly appealing. It was addressing a very large market. It was extremely novel technology. He had done exquisite science. He had taken the science very far, all the way into animals before he published, and then filed appropriate patents before he published, so it was very strong intellectual property position. And I think most importantly, the inventor's background was that of not only cell biologist, but pharmacologist. So he was able to see not just his discovery on the cellular level and on the protein level, but he had thought about how to turn that into a therapeutic and had worked in that direction. So he was really thinking about not only the problem he discovered, but how to solve the problem. So as he presented that idea to, his work to Mitch and I, we talked to him about thinking about forming a company. As it turned out, Alan didn't feel that he wanted to leave the university. He's a younger scientist on a tenure track. Really his first seminal publication around this work, which came out in Nature Medicine. So he made the decision to stay at the university while Mitch and I formed a corporation and approached the university about taking an option on the technology, an option being a placeholder, if you will, to give us some time to try to raise money to actually own the technology through a licensing agreement. So that we first heard about it in the summer of '05, and by November of '05 we incorporated an entity. But Mitch and I both realized that in the current funding climate, a single technology that had only been in a mouse was very unlikely to draw funding from venture capitalists or even angel investors. So we made a decision that we needed more technologies in the company. One just wasn't going to cut it. And we began to go shopping for some things that we could put with it to create a good story. And we couldn't be haphazard about what we looked at. It had to fit with the technology we had already found, which, while it involved metabolic diseases, it was also characterized by new information about the role of an inflammatory protein called CRP. So we had metabolic diseases, we had a peptide therapeutic, we had inflammation. So we began to look at other opportunities that we thought might fit with this to try to create a company, because a single technology often isn't enough to be a company. There's just too much risk in that one idea. If it fails, end of game. So you need plan B, plan C. And I think more importantly, in today's climate, we also felt strongly that we needed the other technology to be more advanced than the one that Dr. Zhao had developed. Even though it had made it to animals, which from an academic perspective seems very far advanced, from a venture capitalist perspective, you've barely begun. So we were looking for something that perhaps had seen more than one species of animal, perhaps had already been through toxicology screening in preparation for human administration, or a real home run would be something that had already been in man. And so as we thought about that, looking at universities for that level of technology can be a tough game, because it's very rare that a technology can make it that far in academia, although some do. We actually were looking at existing companies, at technologies that had been shelved for one reason or another. We also looked at some other small companies that looked like us, that maybe had one technology, and we probably talked to, I'm betting, more than a dozen other companies and opportunities, and evaluated those really with some pretty simple criteria. It had to fit with what we had. It had to be more advanced than the one that we had to have strong intellectual property protection, and we had to be able to obtain it at a reasonable price. And of course, we wanted it to have a large market opportunity as well. But in therapeutics, most things do, if unless it's a very esoteric disease. So as we looked at those opportunities, we were lucky enough to come across a small company in California that actually had had several therapeutic programs, had raised more than $40 million. Mitch knew their CEO from a previous relationship he had had with them. And they had burned through a lot of money doing a clinical trial for their lead drug, which was a sepsis compound. That left them in a very poor cash position, and they had kind of unwound most of their staff. But another program that they had that had completed a phase 1 study successfully was sitting on the shelf. And so when we asked about that technology, basically we learned that it was in boxes at Iron Mountain. All of the data that they had accumulated over the 3 years of the program, and they'd spent several $1 million on the program, but it was sitting in an Iron Mountain storage facility. So their company needed money, we needed another technology to raise money, and so we were able to strike a bargain whereby we wrote him a very small check. Mitch wrote it out of his personal bank account to, again, put a hold on the technology for a period of time. And then we thought we'd take the two things and go shop them to some prospective early stage investors who might give us enough money to actually transact the business that we were hoping to do. And we were lucky enough to find those investors in Philadelphia, PA Early Stage, which is a great partner here in Western Pennsylvania and in the state as a whole. And Paul Schmidt and Dean Miller got together with us and were able to do a seed round with us. And we were able to convince them and close the round in under 90 days, which was important because that's all the longer our hold was on the technology. So with that transaction, we were able to obtain the rights to the clinical stage compound that had already completed a phase 1. We had the Zhao technology from the University of Pittsburgh. The money that came in for that seed round, nearly half of it went immediately back out the door to the little company in California. We also gave them an equity stake in Logical Therapeutics so that their interests were tied to ours. And we suddenly were a company that had a little bit of money in the bank and 2 compounds, one preclinical and one clinical stage. We felt that to really round out the story, we should have a few more pieces of intellectual property, so we continued to look. We did in-license a second technology from the University of Pittsburgh, developed by Reza Zarnagar and Marie DeFrancis, with some assistance from a group at Duke. And now we've got a 4th technology from a university in Europe that is a combination product of some known drugs. So a little different type of intellectual property analysis you need to do when that's happening. So it's a use patent for a previously unknown combination to treat a disease that is common for long-term critical illness.
Tell us about the 2 technologies coming out of the university here in the United States, at University of Pittsburgh. What was that process like?
Well, they're both very early stage technology. So one of the challenges is putting a value on that when it's very early stage. And sometimes it's hard for the inventor to recognize just how early it is and how far the road ahead is really going to be. Just because you've been in a mouse and you've proven that it works in mouse, you still have a tremendous amount of work to do. You've got to figure out how you can make a drug that can be safely administered to people that will be safe and efficacious. And that's probably a 10-year process beyond where it is when it's in the university. So when you negotiate the licensing terms for that agreement, the company is interested in back-weighting as much of the money as possible because we don't want to pay until we know if it works. Of course, the university would like to see its money now. In particular, they'd like their patent costs recovered, which oftentimes can be substantial. So we agreed to cover all of the back patent fees for both of the technologies, which was substantial, into 6 figures. We also agreed to make certain milestone payments over time, and really that was the balance of reducing the risk with the value, right? That we will give you more money once it passes certain milestones, and those milestones are related to, again, proving safety and efficacy in humans. So the first milestone is usually some sort of proof of concept. Can I show that a therapeutic strategy would work in an animal model of the disease of interest? The next milestone is usually some sort of passing of a toxicology testing in an appropriate species. Normally 2 species, rat and dog, are often common, but it depends on the therapeutic strategy. So normally there's a milestone payment associated with that, and then again with making it into humans, the filing of the appropriate regulatory papers, the conduct of the original phase 1 and ultimately a phase 2 study to show both safety and efficacy. So the milestones are ramped with these activities, and at the same time the company agrees to try to conduct those activities in a reasonable amount of time, and if we fail to do so, then the university has the right to take the technology back. So it's a negotiation that you can expect to take a number of months. We had to put real cash down to even have the opportunity to begin those negotiations, and the out the door cash expect to be in 6 figures when you do these types of transactions with a significant drug like Dr. Zhao has discovered, and when it makes a publication like Nature Medicine, it draws a lot of attention.
Let's talk about the market opportunity. How did you evaluate the breadth and depth of the market opportunity for these technologies?
It's a great question. So the market opportunity is a factor of obviously the disease itself. So with, for example, Dr. Zhao's technology, he's looking at addressing what is probably one of the largest public health problems both in the US and elsewhere, and that's metabolic syndrome, which is characterized by type 2 diabetes, obesity, hyperlipidemia. These are very serious public health problems because over the long term they lead to cardiovascular problems, breathing problems, the complications associated with diabetes. So if we could find a therapeutic that was able to address this problem, really the world is your oyster. There's really nothing that is working to reverse those diseases. We manage those diseases with products like insulin and some of the newer drugs that manage glucose more tightly. But there really is no drug on the market that is able to look at the root cause. So that was a pretty exciting concept. And we know that Amgen, as a company, had attempted to create a drug in this space. The drug was recombinant human leptin. And Amgen spent more than $1 billion in an attempt to develop that drug, if that gives you an idea of what they saw the market opportunity to be. Unfortunately, the recombinant human leptin failed in clinical trials. What made Dr. Zhao's technology so interesting was he explained why it failed, and he showed that he could get around their failure. So that was pretty exciting to us. So the market opportunity was validated by Amgen, by a major player in the market space. The intellectual property was very solid, and I can't express how critical that is. If Alan had not been judicious enough to keep his work confidential, to use confidentiality agreements with his collaborators, and to be very, very careful about not allowing the information to leak out until he was ready, because he had to file those patents before the information was disclosed in a public way. And so without those patents, neither us nor anyone else would have been interested. So the market opportunity was huge. He had done his homework and protected the technology. He'd gone beyond a concept to development of an actual therapeutic, although it's unlikely to be the therapeutic we would go to market with because it's a very large peptide. Our work will be to try to make the peptide smaller so that the cost of goods are lower. Cost of goods in peptides is very high. So every time we can remove an amino acid, we increase our chances of cost of goods. Actually, if it was a good bit larger, there's a way to manufacture them cheaper, but it's in that in-between space where they're very expensive to make, so we're going to try to get out of that space. So the market opportunity involved all of those factors. When you're talking about a multi-billion-dollar market, cost of goods becomes less of an issue, but nonetheless, it's still something that you need to be thinking about.
Thank you for listening to The Entrepreneur's Experience. I'm Babs Carrier, President and CEO of Remcom Inc. and President of Carrier Consulting. Special thanks go to Mark Melandro, Associate Vice Chancellor of Technology Management and Commercialization at the University of Pittsburgh, for providing support to the Offices of Enterprise Development and Technology Management for this educational series. Additional funding was provided by the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development through a Keystone Innovation Grant. Production facilities provided by the Center for Instructional Development and Distance Education. Diane Davis, Director. Video production, James Crawford, Manager. Audio recording and editing, Leonard Gendry. Copyright 2007, University of Pittsburgh.